Homicides do not decrease, but rather...
I was so good at
A light was turned on in the world on the 30th of November 2002, the International Cities for Life, Cities Against the Death Penalty Day. A group of cities decided to light up their monuments to say no to the death penalty. The following year, the initiative gained strength and the number of cities practically doubled. But let's take a step back. A few months before the 30th of November 2002, Rome saw the birth of the World Coalition, the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty. Its objective is the universal abolition of the death penalty. Formed by more than 130 organizations, the World Coalition aims to reinforce the international dimension of the fight against the death penalty. We owe the birth of the World Coalition to the community of Sant'Egidio, which has maintained a close relationship with death row inmates since the mid-90s through visits, correspondence, and legal defense. 10 years, yes. But has it been just any 10 years? Absolutely not. This last decade has been the one in which capital punishment has been the most questioned ever in the history of humanity. What do these countries have in common? They are all part of the group of states that abolished the death penalty between 2002 and 2012. Many more have stopped using it or have temporarily suspended it with a moratorium. 140 countries have abolished the death penalty. 58 retain the death penalty. At the end of the 1960s, the situation was as follows. 55 countries had abolished the death penalty. 143 still retained it. Plus, in these last 10 years, the United Nations has encouraged retentionist countries to abolish the death penalty by applying a moratorium or limiting its use. Since 2004, the community of Sant'Egidio has been organizing international conferences with ministers of justice to discuss this issue. These encounters have fostered abolitionist decisions. The questions many jurisdictions have begun raising include: studies prove that homicides do not decrease, but rather increase in places where the death penalty has been introduced. Is it possible the death penalty has failed? Taking someone's life is irreversible, and justice is not immune to judicial errors. How can you compensate for a victim who has been unjustifiably assassinated? Does the death penalty truly do justice for the victim's family?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, students, and welcome to the afternoon session of the first Asia-Pacific Dialogue on Human Rights and Respect for the Dignity of Life with the theme, No Justice Without Life. We do hope that you had a very good lunch, and we sincerely hope that you made yourself very busy during the break, texting your relatives, and tweeting and posting pictures on Facebook and Instagram so that you can tell the world about your stand against the death penalty, and so that you can tell them and your voices can be heard. So, to start this afternoon session, allow me to say that we have the honor to have amongst us one extraordinary member of the Italian Parliament. Not only is he a member of the Italian Parliament, he is also the president of the Commission for Human Rights and the co-founder of the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty in Italy. So, let me welcome Mario Marazziti. Moving on, I'm sorry, Honorable Mario Marazziti is not yet here. So Let me call on Deputy Administrator Lorna Yumul to introduce our two other speakers.
Good afternoon. We are privileged to have among us today two people who will give their testimonies about their actual experiences and their stand for the importance and dignity of life. Our first speaker's brother Paul was stabbed multiple times by a mentally ill homeless man, Dennis Sutar, as he was leaving the shelter where he had worked for 10 years. He died shortly thereafter. Dennis was found mentally incompetent to stand trial and was sentenced to 60 years at a Connecticut prison hospital. A longtime organizer, speaker, and writer in the faith-based movement for peace, justice, and nonviolence, our speaker is a member of the Dorothy Day Catholic Worker in Washington, D.C. He has participated in the annual Starving for Justice, Fast and Vigil to abolish the death penalty at the U.S. Supreme Court, taken part in the Journey of Hope in North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, and Virginia, spoken in Italy during the Cities of Life worldwide campaign to abolish the death penalty, and testified before the Maryland State Senate Judiciary Committee. In 1997, he was arrested as part of the DC-18 for unfurling a 30-foot banner across the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court that said, "Stop execution." Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker, Mr. Art Laffin.
Good afternoon. Distinguished brothers and sisters and dear friends, I am very honored and humbled to be among you. I want to thank the community of Sant'Egidio for inviting me to come to Manila. And I would like to express my deep appreciation to the community of Sant'Egidio and the Department of Justice of the Philippines and the City Council of Manila, Mandaluyong, for organizing this most important conference. This is my first time here in the Philippines, and I want to thank everyone who has offered me such a gracious welcome and also for your loving hospitality. Thank you very much. I presently live with my wife and son and several other community members at the Dorothy Day Catholic Worker in Washington, D.C. We are a small Christian community that provides hospitality to 5 homeless families who live with us. We are also involved in serving the poor and homeless of Washington, as well as involved in nonviolent actions for peace and justice. We live in a world where every person is a potential victim of violence. And this reality came home to me in a very powerful way 15 years ago when Paul, my younger brother, was murdered in Hartford, Connecticut. On September 20th, 1999, as Paul was leaving the Mercy Housing and Shelter program, where he had worked and ministered for 10 years, he was stabbed to death by a mentally ill homeless man, Dennis Sutar, who often came to the soup kitchen and shelter. My family and I were consumed with a sorrow that defies words, a pain that pierced my heart. I still can't believe what happened to my younger brother. Whenever I speak, I always ask people in the audience, is there anyone present here who has had a member of their family murdered? And if you would feel that you could do so, you could raise your hand, but I understand why you might not want to. Because it's very important for us to know if somebody has gone through this tragedy so we can offer support to them. Did somebody raise their hand in the back? I couldn't tell. Okay. I offer you my condolences, and you know that the pain of this great loss of a loved one. My brother Paul was 2 years younger than me. He loved music. He had a great sense of humor, loved to make people laugh. He was known as Mr. Holidays because he was able to get top-grade donated food every holiday so that he could make a special meal for the shelter residents. Like all of us, my brother was by no means perfect. He certainly had his share of struggles and difficulties. But despite the challenges he faced in his own life, my brother loved the poor and did what he could to alleviate their suffering. My brother truly gave his life for those he served. My family and I and all who knew Paul still grieve his senseless, horrific death. I'd like to just pass around a picture of my brother and Dennis, and this is in the front page of the Hartford newspaper following his murder. With respect to Dennis Sutar, he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia in the mid-1980s. Since that time, he often refused to take his medication and refused help from his family. He was hospitalized at least 3 times and then released. 6 months before this tragic murder, the state of Connecticut cut all funding for the mentally ill homeless. So this meant that Dennis had nobody to oversee his medication and to monitor him. He was clearly a danger to himself and to others. In the end, Dennis fell through the cracks, and it resulted in the death of my brother. Dennis was ultimately deemed incompetent to stand trial for killing my brother. Had he been deemed competent to go to trial and was convicted, he could face the death penalty in Connecticut. He is now serving a 60-year sentence in a Connecticut prison hospital. What happened to my brother is not uncommon and is tragically occurring across the United States. A year before my brother's death, there had been 2 similar murders in Connecticut committed by mentally ill homeless people. It is a societal disgrace that mentally ill people who fall through the cracks and who are not properly cared for end up involved in brutal killings. After Paul's highly publicized death, my mother and I, through God's amazing grace, appealed to the public to show mercy toward Dennis Sutar and to pray for him. This was very, very hard to do. Despite feeling anger, rage, and shock, I recalled that Jesus, the only founder of a major religion to be executed, said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will obtain mercy. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." As Jesus is being executed, he says to his persecutors, "Father, forgive them." In this moment, Jesus is putting into practice his command to love your enemies. On the cross, Jesus shows the world how to live and how to die. I also thought about the example of others, past and present, who experienced similar violent tragedies and who were ultimately able to show compassion to the perpetrator of violence. During my eulogy for Paul at his funeral, I asked people to pray for Dennis and show mercy and compassion to him. I also made an appeal that all resources be made available to provide a continuum of care for Dennis and all other mentally ill homeless, so that future tragedies like what happened to my brother might be averted in the future. I believe that all the monies and resources that are being misused and wasted on the death penalty, weapons, and war should instead be used to help the poor. I want to emphasize very strongly that the poor are never expendable. My late mom and I were able to meet and pray with members of the Sutar family, Dennis's brother and sister-in-law, and we asked them to convey to Dennis our prayers for his healing. I ask you to join me in praying for Dennis, praying for his healing, and that he may know God's forgiving love. My prayers go out to all family members throughout our world who are grieving the loss of loved ones who have been murdered. I know something of their pain, and I pray for their healing. There are many people who believe that we have to kill the murderer in order to bring closure to the victim's family. I believe that killing people who kill will never bring true closure and healing. Killing Dennis would never bring my brother back. It would never bring healing or closure for me and my family. The pain of Paul's murder will always be in my heart. Certainly, individuals, groups, and even corporations and governments who commit violent acts must be held accountable for their actions and make restitution to the victims' families. But we must never sanction killing those who kill, no matter how brutal the crime. Rather, we should pursue the way of restorative justice that seeks to heal and restore those who commit violent acts. Since 1976, when the death penalty was reinstated in the United States, a total of 1,389 people have been executed. 510 people have been executed in Texas alone. I ask, how can we break the cycle of violence and killing? How can we promote healing for everyone who has experienced the unspeakable pain resulting from murder? I believe that the best way to honor my brother is to work for the prevention of violence, not to replicate it. It is my experience that the way to true healing is not through revenge and retribution, but rather through compassion, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Martin Luther King Jr., who opposed the death penalty, said that capital punishment is society's final assertion that it will not forgive. He also said, love, even for enemies, is the key to the solution of the problems of our world. And I totally agree with South African Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who declared, "There is no future without forgiveness." Ultimately, I oppose the death penalty because it violates God's command, "Thou shalt not kill." I also oppose the death penalty because it is racially biased. Poor defendants do not receive adequate legal representation, and innocent people are sentenced to death. Since 1973, 146 people have been released from death row across the United States because of evidence showing their innocence. It's been truly an honor and blessing for me to come to know a number of these death row exonerees. As a member of the Murder Victims' Families for Human Rights, I oppose the death penalty because it is the ultimate denial of human rights. It is the premeditated and cold-blooded killing of a human being by the state. And it violates the right to life as proclaimed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Journey of Hope, an organization that I am also a member of, is comprised of murder victim family members, death row exonerees, and relatives of those on death row, as well as relatives of people who have had their family members sentenced and condemned to death and executed. We unequivocally oppose the death penalty in all cases. We believe that our grief will not be lessened by causing pain to others. An execution only creates another victim, another grieving family. The journey before us in the United States to abolish the death penalty is still a very challenging one. While 18 states no longer have the death penalty, 32 states still do. There were 39 executions in the United States last year, and there have been 30 executions already so far this year. 6 people are scheduled to be executed for the remainder of this year, including one in Texas who is scheduled to be executed today, and also one in Missouri who is scheduled to be executed tomorrow. There are 3,049 prisoners on death row in the United States. The majority of U.S. Supreme Court justices, politicians, and prosecutors still favor the death penalty. But despite these challenges, we in the United States abolition movement remain determined to end state-sanctioned murder. And I want to thank my friend George Kane for all the work he has done in Connecticut to help bring about the abolition of Connecticut in my home state. With some 25,000 people on death rows around the world today, we still have a lot of work to do. We cannot rest until the death penalty is abolished everywhere in our world. We are all called to be peacemakers, and as Gandhi said, to be the change that we want to see in the world. When I look out at each of you here today, I see wonderful, beautiful peacemakers. My friends, always remember that the greatest work we can do with our lives is to uphold the sacredness of all life and respect the dignity of each person, especially the poor and the victims. Just as slavery was abolished and segregation ended in the United States, the Berlin Wall came down, apartheid ended in South Africa, and the People Power nonviolent revolution brought down an authoritarian and repressive regime here in the Philippines in 1986. the death penalty can and will one day be abolished worldwide. And this is what this conference is about, to make that become a reality. Finally, let us always remember what Dorothy Day, the co-founder of the Catholic Worker, of which I am a member of, said, that love is the only solution to all the problems that we face. In a world where violence and killing have seemingly become the norm, let us never forget that violence ends where love begins. No justice without life. Thank you very much for listening to me, and may God bless each of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Art Laffin. And now our next speaker is a professor of criminal justice in the Division of Justice and Law Administration at the Western City State University. He has been a full-time faculty member since 1994. He is also a police commissioner for the town of Richfield City, a position he had held for over 15 years. He holds a PhD in criminal justice from the City University of New York, John Hay College of Criminal Justice, and is Director of Training and Education for the Police Commissioners Association of CT. Prior law enforcement experience includes serving as an adult probation officer for the state of City and a city judicial branch administrator prior beginning his full-time teaching career. He has presented nationally and internationally on issues related to having an informed and educated perspective in dealing with law enforcement officers and public policy makers on the issue of capital punishment. He has recently co-authored 2 peer-reviewed papers. The first appeared in the International Journal of Business and Social Sciences, A Tale of Two Towns, while relying on aggravating circumstance to support capital punishment among law enforcement has become so aggravating. And the second has been published by the Journal of Social Sciences and Business, research entitled Blake House, Aggravating Factors in Capital Punishment and Legislative Subplots in the Attempt of Abolition. He has a third paper in progress which has been presented at 2 national conferences and will soon be published. For the last 2 years, in the month of November, he has presented lectures and has attended the World Ministers of Justice Congress in Rome, Italy, at an annual conference entitled A World Without the Death Penalty. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. George F. Kane.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. All right, now we're talking. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate it very much. But you know what? It's not about me. It's not about me at all. Today, it's about you. We're here today because we want to talk with and we want to hear about you and what you're doing and what you'd like to know. So I'm going to be very brief because we don't have a real lot of time. And I want to talk just about a couple of things. How many of you were here for the morning session? Hands, please. Can I see? Okay, most of you. Okay, good. So I think what I'd like to do is maybe start by picking up a little bit on some of the themes that we talked about this morning. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about what I've done for a living, because I think that's going to set the stage for you to understand how I've come to where I am. I used to support capital punishment. I did for many, many years. I worked as a probation officer, and I'm currently a police commissioner. But for many years, I believed that we needed to have the death penalty because it kept, especially my concern, it kept law enforcement officers safe. I believed that people would think twice before they would kill a police officer or somebody who worked in law enforcement. Now, I now know that that's not true, but that's not the point of what I want to get here today. When I was a probation officer, and we heard from many probation officers this morning, and I just have to say, I was very moved by the presentations this morning. To have a group of people up here to talk about the importance of understanding people's problems and of understanding the things that cause people to do the things that they do. That is the critical thing that each and every one of us need to understand if we are going to be successful in our society. People have problems. Their behaviors very often don't reflect what the real problem is inside, and we judge them by their behaviors. Now, we have to hold them accountable. I'm not saying that we should let people do what they want to do. But for those of us that work with people who do things that they shouldn't be doing, we have an obligation to make sure that we get to the root of what their problems are. I learned something in my career as a probation officer which really opened my eyes. Because in our society, we believe, those of us that are law-abiding, successful, happy, that we're somehow different from all of those other people, the criminals, those people that we would rather not associate with, the haves and the have-nots, us versus them. That us versus them attitude is very, very common in the United States. Here too in the Philippines? We create a division in society, and we like it because it helps us to feel good about ourselves. That's the way I grew up. When I became a probation officer, I was a pretty tough guy. I looked at people that were on the other side of the desk from me as being very different from me. I had nothing in common with them. And you know what? I was wrong. I learned over the years as I dealt with people, when I finally started to let my guard down a little bit, and I started treating people as people, and not as the enemy, or somehow less than me. I would start to talk to people in my office, and what I began to realize was not so much the differences between them and me, but the similarities that we shared. I would talk to people and I would learn from them that they wanted the same things in life that I wanted. They went about it the wrong way, but they all wanted the same things. They wanted to be loved. They wanted to be happy. They wanted to be economically secure. They wanted a job. They wanted a family. Those are all good things. Those are all things we all want. And some people in our society have a difficult time getting those things. It's hard getting a job these days, isn't it? Yeah. And as people get older and they don't have a job and they take on responsibilities, it's hard. So, why is this important? I've heard it said that there are a lot of reasons why we need to be against capital punishment. And when I was supporting capital punishment, I didn't want to hear about that. You can have all the reasons in the world that you want. But I've come to realize that the death penalty, more than anything else, is a spiritual issue. It's a spiritual issue. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. We spent a lot of time yesterday on the panel and in the discussions talking about a culture of death versus a culture of life, and how we need to support a culture of life. Well, I want you to think about what that really means. What do we mean by a culture of death? For me, when I think of how we develop a culture of death, it starts with things like anger, resentment, hatred, and fear. When we experience those kinds of emotions, have those feelings, what do those kinds of feelings really do to us inside? They paralyze us. They hold us. We're captive by those feelings. Hatred is very strong. Anger is very strong. And we experience those feelings. And I think it's very easy to move into separation from other people, living in our own world, protecting ourselves because of the hurts that we have and the anger that we have. Culture of life. What do we mean by a culture of life? A culture of life embraces hope. It embraces concern. It embraces vision. Those are the kinds of emotions and feelings that empower us. They don't paralyze us like the culture of death does. Those kinds of things in a culture of life empower us. It gives us a reason to move forward, to want to be a part of our world and of helping other people. For me, as I moved through my career and I moved through working as a law enforcement officer, I came to realize, and I'm going to be very honest with you, I came to realize that I needed to allow the truths of my faith to enter into me, into what I did. I needed the Word of God and the life of Jesus. I needed to look at that and say, that's what I need to be successful. And I came to learn that because I experienced that culture of death. And I knew what it was doing inside me. I knew it was tearing me up inside. Little by little, slowly. And see, that is the trick of the devil. It's not that we're overcome all at once. The culture of death develops over a period of time, little by little, and then before you know it, bam, you're right in the grip of it. And this is what we see, or at least what I see so clearly in people who support capital punishment. They're trapped in their feelings. They're held captive. They're held away from what the truth really is. Because the truth sets us free. So I began to immerse myself more and more in God's Word and trying to apply it to my life in an everyday way. Good versus evil. How many of you think about that? What's good? What's evil? St. Paul tells us in his epistles, in Ephesians, for we wrestle and fight not against the flesh and blood, but against powers, against the rulers of darkness in this world, against spiritual forces of evil. Now, don't be scared by that. St. Paul said that because he said, my brothers and sisters, you need to be aware of this. But we have something greater that we can hold on to. He says earlier in that chapter in Ephesians, to put on the full armor of God, to fight against those forces of evil. And he said that because He knew that we needed it. As human beings, we don't have the strength on our own to fight the forces of evil. As human beings, we don't have the strength on our own to fight against capital punishment. We need to pray. We need to make Jesus at the center of our lives. We need to read the Scripture. We need to let God show us and clear up things for us. The community of Sant'Egidio, if you go on their website and you see the things that they do and the principles that they're committed to, what's the first one? Prayer. Prayer. We need to be in communication with our Savior because we are weak. And it is easy for us to fall into the trap of the evil one. It's all around us. I didn't make this up, okay? This isn't me speaking. This is St. Paul. This is the Word of God. That's why we need to look at this and we need to live by it. Because without living in the Word, my brothers and sisters, we are lost. Lost. And it doesn't take a lot to look around and see a lot of people who are lost in this world, does it? St. Paul also tells us as a result, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. To be transformed. I spoke yesterday, we talked yesterday about transformation and conversion. That means that we need to rethink, we need to relook and rethink about the way we look at things and the way we think about things. Because too often we're trapped by what's right around us. Those powers of evil that St. Paul wrote about. We need to let the truth come into us. We need to read the Word of God. We need to listen to the people around us. We need to be in relationship with people like are here today. We need to talk about the kinds of things that we're talking about today. How easy it is for us to get confused, huh? For me too. For me too. It's a difficult world. I've gotten finally to the point in my life where when I wake up in the morning now, I don't let my feet hit the floor before I say, Lord, I need you. I don't want to do it on my own anymore. I've been there. I've done that. I need you to show me the way. Lead me. And you know what the cool thing is? You know what the really cool thing is about that? He does it. He puts the path before us. I remembered as I was sitting up here before what it was to be young. And how hard it was. How difficult it was. Parents telling you got to do this, and you got to do that, and you got to go to school, and you got to do that. You know what I'm talking about. I know. I've been through it. It's hard. It's hard. And school, and people, and it's hard. You know, cliques, and people you don't want to be around, and it's hard. But I will tell you something, my friends, my dear young people. It gets harder when you get older. You take on responsibilities that you're not ready to take on. Hits you over the head like a brick. Whoa. I learned the hard way. Because like a lot of people, I thought that my way was the best way. How many of you think that you know better than somebody else? So we need to have our minds transformed. We need to pray, and we need to be in relationship with each other. I remember when I was younger and I went to church. I said, do we have to go to church? Do we have to go to Mass? Now, I try to go every day. Every single day I try to go to Mass. Why? Because, like I said before, I don't want my feet to hit the floor before I start my day the right way. Lord, my life is yours. Do with me what you will. I wake up with a smile on my face because I expect that my day is going to be led by the Holy Spirit. It's real. It works. The death penalty. One part of this transformation, one part of this culture of life that we've been focusing on the past few days. Very important. But the bigger issue for all of us is that culture of life. What does that mean? Having hope, having vision, having concern, and being full of love. We get that from God. We share that with each other. That's what we need to do. So I'm going to stop right now because I don't want to scare you anymore. But I know that you probably have some questions, and that's why we're here. So fire away. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. George Kane. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Governor Ramil Hernandez of Santa Cruz, Laguna. Welcome, sir. And now, we have the honor to have amongst us one extraordinary member of the Italian Parliament. Not only is he a member of the Italian Parliament, he is also the president of the Commission for Human Rights, and at the same time, the co-founder of the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Honorable Mario Marazziti.
I was a boy as you are not anymore because you are grown up. I was a kid. And I did not read the newspapers. But in Italian newspapers, there were the drawings to describe how an execution in California of a man called Charlie Chessman, the last execution that took place in California before a stop for a while, was happening. And I remember the small cut in the iron door from which a pill of poison was falling down in some water. Then the pill was becoming vapor, poison, and there was the description of in how many minutes that person would die. I did not know that my life was to become something related to that. But this is still in my memory. Then I studied. You study. And people who do not study or who do not have the chance to study a lot often spend some part of their life in prison. And often, the majority of those who are on death rows are people who have had little chance to study. So you have a privilege, as I have had a privilege, to study, and this is a talent that must be spent for others. And so what I want to share with you this afternoon is that how my life, the life of one person who met the life of another person, can create miracles. So I'm sure that after this afternoon, since you are not one, but you are many, the world has no chance in the future to still have the death penalty. And the world does not have any chance in the future to be in some corners as bad as it is. And that the suffering of so many poor has no chance in the future to be exactly as it is now. I was one. Then, at a certain moment, I met another friend who is the founder of the community of Sant'Egidio. And We have here a beautiful member of the community of Sant'Egidio in Manila, and really, you will love her. You will learn how to love her. And he was reading the gospel and saying, well, we have to change the world. And how to change the world? The gospel, friendship, and stay with the poor. From that embryo, what happened over the last 40 years is that it was possible to stop a civil war in Africa, like in Mozambique, that killed 1 million people. Just putting together the fighters and the government. As we hope it will happen now forever in Mindanao. No war anymore. This is possible. Also, the Sant'Egidio community was involved in this process, is still involved in the process of reconciliation. And I started to visit the dropout children, schooling children in the shacks. Here in Manila, there are many shacks, many huts, many bidonvilles. And proposing friendship instead of gangs. Music bands instead of gangs. Or bands of friends instead of bands of killers. And at a certain moment, staying with the poor, thinking that we are friends of the poor. The poor are part of our life, of our family. I met again the problem of the death penalty. I visited death rows in America. I have a friend who left death row. He was innocent. He is innocent. His name is Curtis. And he has lived 20 years in Oklahoma death row. It is very modern. Modern means that they imagine all the ways to make you become an animal before they kill you. For instance, normally, when you are on death row, your cell is of one. You are in isolation. In Oklahoma, no. They are in two. But they put together two that potentially hate each other. If one is known for hating a black man and is white, they put a white man and a black man together. If one is afraid or scared or despises gay people, is in a cell with a gay person. Because torture must be every day. And the death row is built underground. There is never the sky. You never know if it is day or night. There is always this kind of light. And this is to make you become crazy. So, the person that is on death row is in many ways tortured many times before being killed, so that many stop making their appeals because they prefer to be executed. And some try to commit suicide. Some other become like animals. Those who resist, many of them become like saints. Because to suffer so much teaches them all the bad side of the violence they may have lived or they may have caused to others, and they feel real sorrow if they did something wrong. But many of them are innocent. But they also understand the system. And they understand that also the guards are taken into the same cycle of violence. So that the system of the death penalty humiliates and somehow tries to take the souls also of the guards, not only of the prisoners. And why it is so bad? Because when a state kills someone, tries to tell itself that it's not killing a human being, it's killing a subhuman being. Because nobody can accept that it's participating consciously, scientifically, cold blood in killing someone that did nothing bad to him. But if you think that that human being is not a human being, it's like a fly, it's like a mosquito, maybe that you kill him. And this does not cause a big problem inside your conscience. Just to give you an idea, where there is death row in Texas, Huntsville, the death chamber in Texas, that is Huntsville, a large majority of the population lives around the work of prisons. There are many prisons in Huntsville. And the violence inside families in Huntsville is 3 times higher than the violence in families in all the United States and in the rest of Texas. Why? Because the good people, the law enforcement people, all the people that work around the prisons, all the people who work inside the prison, receive so much violence in their blood from the system that at home they tend to be much worse than average human Americans. So this is just to give you how and what the death penalty does to the good people, to the so-called bad people. But we have heard the testimony of the super professor and real Christian that spoke before me. Well, many of them are just us that had a different life. But so I want to say today to you how one single person or a small group of students, like the students that started the community of Sant'Egidio, can change the world. And so this is why you can change. I know that you can change the world. I want to tell you that in the small church of Sant'Egidio, that is the headquarters in Rome, but now, fortunately, Sant'Egidio is not Italian anymore. It is global and local. So everywhere there are local people. And there is a crucifix, Jesus. It's a wooden cross, but it is not a wooden cross. It is a wooden body of Jesus. The cross was broken, it's not there anymore. And even the Jesus is without arms because it's broken, so there is only the trunk. We call him Christ of impotence or Christ of weakness. We have to be the arms of Jesus. And we have to change the world by using weak means and not the power. But nevertheless, we can change the world, and we are changing the world. So, can you think that really a civil war that caused 1 million people deaths now is peace, is 20 years of peace in Mozambique because of this small group of students? Can you imagine the same happened in Burundi, where there was a genocide between Hutus and Tutsis? Burundi and Rwanda, in Africa, 800 people were killed in 2 months by using sword, sticks, ancient weapons, one-on-one. You can imagine the amount of blood, of hatred? That genocide was stopped also when myself and other people of the community of Sant'Egidio, with Nelson Mandela and others, started a negotiation table, and that war finished. Now they live together. A reconciliation process started. And what is to try to stop the death penalty about? The death penalty is the ultimate punishment. If you make a mistake, you cannot give the life back. It is the sum of all the abuses on human rights. Because there is mental torture. In Japan, a friend is here from Japan, Ruju Furukawa, and I think he really deserves an applause, because his father fought for many years against the death penalty. He is the son, he's a monk, and he's fighting against the death penalty. But in Japan, they do not say to the person on death row the day in which he will be killed. This means that from the very first day, every time that that door opens, it can be for receiving food, receiving a letter, receiving a visit, rarely, being punished, beaten without reason, or being killed. And it happens once, twice a day. Just last March, one Japanese person, after 46 years on death row, try to count 360 days multiplied 46, every day suffered this torture. He left the death house because he was simply innocent. And of course, he hardly knows where he is now. His mind goes back and forth. But he knows that he had been to hell. When he speaks, you cannot follow well his words. But he says, I was in hell. I was in the abyss. In the abyss, 500 meters underground, there are those who eat soups, the phantoms. This is how he describes death row and his life. Then, on death row, I have met beautiful human beings. When I entered Texas death row, and I met a person called Dominic Green. Dominic Green is the beginning of the abolition of the death penalty in many states in the world through the community of Sant'Egidio and through this friendship. How? In 1995, he wrote a letter to an Italian newspaper. Some person on death row had told them, Italians are sensitive to this problem. Strange to say, it is true, because the first abolition in history of the death penalty was in Italy, was the state at that time of the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, Florence. They abolished the death penalty in 1786, before Italy became Italy. This letter was read by a younger friend of mine. She wrote back and started to be pen pal. After that, she was telling me and other people of us the story of this person. Then a group of people of Sant'Egidio started to be involved in being inside death row. And through a letter, we started to know the story of this person, how when he was 18, he was part of a band that was trying just to live, and they stole $20. But in a fight, unfortunately, there was a real person who really lost his life. There was one shot in the struggle. But in Texas, the one who is less guilty, if there is a crime committed by a band, normally is the one who received the death penalty. Because the law says that if the co-defendants accuse you, you can be charged even without any outside witness. So normally they offer a discount in the penalty, a lower charge to the others, and the one who is more stupid or weaker receive the death penalty. That was the case. And the case was also that there were 4 people. One was white, 3 were black. The white was not charged. They were in the same car, in the same evening, and they were arrested the first time together. And the 3 blacks were arrested. And the 2 blacks received a discount, and he received a death penalty. Why? Because he was loving a rap that was speaking about a gun. That was the only evidence. There was no gun found, nothing, on death row. And then he was really angry. He was hating the system. He wanted to fight. But then he was destroyed immediately. If you fight the system on death row, you are beaten, you are destroyed, you are tortured. After a while, he changed. He started to understand. And then he became one who was becoming an advisor to the newcomers, not to be caught in the trap of reaction. Then he started to be a very sensitive person. And at the end of the day, he became like a saint on death row. I met this person. He was saying things like, if they had invested all the money that they are investing in destroying me, I could have been an incredible human being. And this is also for the others. And other people like Dominic Green, I met another guy called Nick Yaris. He spent 23 years on death row. He was acquitted, exonerated after 23 years because he was innocent. Then, once he came to Rome, when we have this beautiful event that is called Cities for Life, the Colosseum becomes like gold, and it is the center of a world coalition for life that has now 1,600 towns in the world, and this city where we are now is one of the cities for life. Well, we were coming back from the Colosseum, and we were walking. He had been released just a few months before. And we were walking, and then he was walking backwards. So there is the Colosseum. Sorry, at the back there is the Colosseum. We are walking away, and he's walking this way. And we are together, and he's by me. And I do not say anything. And he starts walking that way. At a certain moment, he tells me, do you think I'm crazy? And I say, sincerely, not politely, no, I was not thinking that you are crazy, but I was asking myself what you are doing. I was sincere. And he said, it is 23 years that I do not see the moon. And there was a beautiful moon there. I don't want to waste 1 second of this view. Then I also told him, I'm sorry for what happened to you. And then he said, no. He's a guy that on death row read 6,000 books in 23 years. And he said, no, you must not be sad for that. I was a really stupid guy. I was a violent guy. I was innocent, but had such a stupid life. Now I'm a real human being. The other friend, Curtis McCarthy, who spent 20 years on that row, I said to him the same thing, because I really feel sorry that, and I asked him, aren't you angry that they stole from you 20 years of your life? And he answered me, no, I do not hate anyone. Because if I would hate them, I would still be a prisoner. Instead, I want to be a free man. I don't want to be like them. So, I want to conclude saying this. The death penalty is wrong for many, many reasons. Many. It is useless. It is not a deterrent. It lowers the state at the level of the one who kills. It makes the state a serial killer. It is a serial killer. It is like those killers that send a letter saying, next week I will kill somebody. And it happens every time. It kills in cold blood. Persons that this does not give the life back to the victims' families, does not heal them, but freezes them in hatred or in the expectation of the revenge for years. Then the death happens and there is no closure. There is more pain. It only adds a death to death. And normally is used also against political opponents. It happened here with heroes of the history of the Philippines. They were killed, executed as if they were enemies of the state, but they were heroes. It is used against minorities, social minorities, and so on. It is used against religious minorities. But the death penalty, at the end of the day, is wrong because life is sacred. It's not in our hands. It's not in the hands of human beings. And the only culture of life that is possible is life, not death. So justice that kills is never justice. Whatever they may say, whatever people may commit, sometimes there are horrible crimes. But if we kill them, we become like them. Always. So this is why I think that you can be an incredible new energy in fighting the death penalty, not just in the Philippines. Now somebody wanted to reintroduce the death penalty. I think that they will not succeed if you speak loud. But you can help other people to be more human, to get rid of the death penalty, also to humanize prisons. You can write a letter to a prisoner. You can become friends with one poor. This is how the community of Sant'Egidio acts. But coming here, I saw that there are these enormous new churches by Iglesia ni Cristo. What's the name exactly? Iglesia ni Cristo. And I thought, well, it's a lot of money. They have beautiful buildings, and there are so many. There are new denominations, okay? Maybe there are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. But they never stopped a civil war that caused 1 million people. 1 million people die. And by using weak means, not money, not power, you, she, me, us, can stop wars, can humanize the world. This is to be the arms of Jesus without arms. So I really beg you to ask for the website and to leave your email and to see how far you can go even if you are a student. Because all this started when I was 16 with a friend that was 17. Everything was done free of charge, willingly, as a volunteer, because nothing that really has a value can be ever bought. Friendship cannot be bought, and love cannot be bought. All the rest can be bought. So, willingly, free of charge, being friendship, a community, the gospel, the poor, we can change the world. So I'm sure that this afternoon something is changing here in the Philippines, in your life, in my life. Thank you.
The floor is now ready for the question and answer portion. May we request the protocol committee to please assist the students? Okay, you may have your questions now. Okay, before the question and answer portion, may we ask Mr. Furukawa to please come on stage.
Good evening. I'm the Buddhist monk in Japan, the representative of, Semezan Schweitzer Temple. Okay. Could you show the pictures? So I'm going to read my paper.
There are 3 pictures that he wants to show. So if they can send them, if they find them. If there is a problem, it's not just to know. Otherwise, we can speak without showing them.
So I'm going to read. Okay. This is the story of Mr. Nishi. He was executed in the morning of 17th June 1975. Despite his continuous assertion of his innocence for 28 years and as a mere suspect of the Fukuoka incident. The Fukuoka incident happened during the American occupation, and it involved a Chinese and a Japanese who were shot in the black market of clothes in Fukuoka. The Japanese police investigated the incident and arrested one Mr. Takeo Nishi, who was then 32 years old, as the principal organizer of the crime and his co-accused. Mr. Kenjiro Ishii, 30 years old, as a shooter, together with 5 more accomplices. As we would say the rest is now the past, a history. May I also show some of the stories in his diaries. The Seimei-zan Schweitzer Temple, through Reverend Tairu Furukawa, my father, try to help and save Mr. Nishi and Mr. Ishii from the death row after Reverend Tairi Furukawa met them and believed that both accused were innocent. Reverend Furukawa sought the support and help of the Minister of Justice for clemency. He continuously did it with the changing of the Minister of Justice. Reverend Furukawa launched a signature campaign by walking in every corner of Japan, asking people in the street for signatures and support. He came up with a report titled Factual Investigation Report, containing 2,000 Japanese manuscript pages. Besides this, he made many public speeches appealing this case to the people. Now, I tell you this story so that you may understand just how terrible and agonizing his life was while in prison. I hope you will help us in our campaign to clear his name despite all these past years. Help us, support us, making our parliament the diet, believe how unjust the death penalty in Japan, and we believe we will make the diet abolish the death penalty soon or in the future. Thank you very much.
So now, we are now going to start if the students have a questions, you can now prepare your questions to our panel.
Yes, thank you. I'm Attorney Imelda Aquino from the Pasig City Legal Office. My question is this. The will of justice is like a balance. We are here talking about how to be humane and kind to the convicted criminal. We want to abolish the death penalty. My question is this. How do we tilt the balance for the family of the victim who was killed, who was raped, who was hurt? How do we try to bring back the capacity to love in the families of the victims who suffered a lot, who were aggrieved, who were pained because of what the criminal did? I think the balance should be in both favors, for the criminal as well as for the family of the victim, the ones who were aggrieved. What are the ways by which we could also help them get over the pain, the suffering that these families are experiencing because of what happened due to the act of the convicted criminal? I want to be enlightened on this. My second question is this. What other forms of deterrence do you have in mind to prevent criminal acts from proliferating in all societies in the world? We want to abolish death penalty, but what other deterrence do you have in mind? How to stop criminals from committing acts that pain people, that hurt society? I want to be clear on this, sirs and ladies.
Thank you, Madam. So before they will answer the question, may we get more questions from the audience, from the students? And then later on, we'll answer in one.
My name is Ramon. I'm an IE student of Rizal Technological University. So there. My question, I wouldn't go to the question straight. So I've been hearing a lot about the America being threatened by terrorists. I was able to actually watch one video wherein this innocent journalist was slaughtered. Probably you are aware of that. So do you think, if ever the American government will be able to capture the leader of that terrorist group, do you think, is he still worth the forgiveness of the people? Or probably, because I suppose the psychology of the Americans right now is that they only think of one thing, which is to kill him, because his soul is, millions of soul is not worth his soul It's like, it's totally unfair that he killed millions of people and then he will not suffer from any. So it will be totally unfair if we will just be letting him go or we will sentence him to lifetime imprisonment. So what do you think is the best punishment for that person, sir?
Other more questions from the students, religious groups, or? Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael from third year accountancy. Here are two questions specifically. What could be the common thing when it comes to justice system, despite the fact that every country has its own diverse justice systems? And the second one is, can restorative justice can still be applied in any country whose judicial process has been slow for some time now? The second question is, can restorative justice can still be applied in any country with a slow judicial process, specifically in the Philippines also? Thank you.
Maybe we could have last question. One more question. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon sa lahat. I'm Pastor Tony Edo from Stay in Christ Church. And then I agree about the no death penalty as a pastor. But how no justice without life to control or to stop the all kind of crimes in this world? And then, for me also as a pastor, I agree to continuously asking to the Lord. But how also the local government and national government to control or to stop the all crimes in this world, especially to those people always doing the crime, like drug delivery o kaya drug pushers. So those people is always continuous destroy the people in this world. So how to control that the kind of crimes?
Maybe I'll have you repeat your question afterwards because I'm not sure that I heard it all. But
okay.
Maybe it goes together with the last question too, with the serious crime. What can we do to prevent crime, and what should we be doing to try to stop people from committing more crimes? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, like you, Pastor, if I had the answer to that question, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be making a lot of money somewhere else. I don't know of a specific strategy of how we can stop people from doing evil. People do evil because they choose to do evil. And one of the I say this in my church all the time. One of the greatest gifts that we have is free will, and one of the biggest curses that we have is free will. God made us as people able to be free to make choices. Many people choose to do the wrong thing, and it happens. People get hurt, victims of crimes. And we need to be spending much, much more attention on repairing the harm that's done to people and not just punishing offenders. That's what restorative justice is partly about. We have to come up with a way of addressing victims' needs, because you're absolutely correct. The criminal justice system does a terrible job of taking care of victims because they see that their primary purpose is to punish offenders. And I think that that's wrong. I think we need to be much more involved as a criminal justice system with making sure the victims are repaired, making sure they get what they need. I agree. And I just one quick story as to how that can work. I mean, I worked with the state of Illinois in the United States to abolish capital punishment 2 years ago. And one of the reasons why we were successful in Illinois was because the state had a criminal justice fund of, I don't know, $14 or $15 million built up to try cases as capital cases. And when the bill was passed to try to eliminate capital punishment, what they said was, we want to take half the money that's in that fund, since we're not going to have capital punishment anymore. We want to put half that money into helping police departments do a better job at apprehending serious criminals, which is not a bad thing. And the other half of the money, we want to create and expand victim services to make sure that those who are victims of violent crime are made whole and are recognized. Victims don't feel recognized by our system. They need to be recognized. They need to be validated. They have been hurt tremendously. But I will also say, the death penalty is not the answer. I can bring you a whole host of victims victim family members who have had loved ones killed and murdered, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers. And the capital punishment process killed them in the meantime. One of the biggest injustices is that our criminal justice system says to people who are victims, we are going to make sure that your loved one's killer gets capital punishment, and then you're going to feel better. I talked before about the tricks and the lies of the evil one. That's the biggest lie right there. You're going to feel better because somebody else is killed? That's just what the evil one wants us to believe. No. And victims have learned and have found out they don't feel better after the one who killed their loved one is killed. You know why? Because they needed true healing. They needed to be ministered to. They needed a way to be able to move on. And the capital process drags things out, and it makes that anger and resentment and the hatred worse. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I am against capital punishment, because I've spoken to those victims who have said, this doesn't help me, it has actually hurt me.
I want to respond to the question of Ramon. I have to begin by saying that I oppose all killing. And whenever I see a situation of violence, as like what happened in my own family, I have to ask the question, as somebody who's trying to follow the way of Jesus, I have to ask the question, what would Jesus have me do? And if you begin with that question, I think you're led to a very different conclusion than if you begin with the question of, well, what kind of revenge should I take? Or the culture says, an eye for an eye, right? Gandhi said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, right? And then we hear that saying, why do we kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong? The logic is flawed, and it doesn't make any sense, just on a strictly logical level. And so we have to look at what the root causes of violence are. And for me, When I look at my own government and what it has done in the Muslim and Arab world since the invasion, or I have to go back to 1991, when the United States bombed Iraq for 42 days straight, destroying the entire infrastructure. We dropped 88,000 tons of bombs on that country in 1991. I had the opportunity to go to Iraq in 1998 to bring medicine and medical supplies to help children who were dying because of the sanctions that the United States imposed really through the United Nations. It was estimated by the United Nations that over 4,000 children were dying a month under the age of 5 in Iraq because of the sanctions. Mainly, they're waterborne diseases. And I had a chance to meet with families and people who had members of their families killed by United States bombings. And the only thing that I could say to them was that I'm very sorry for what my government did to you. And they say, why are you bombing us? Why are you bombing us? And then there was the whole lie of, we said Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Well, it wasn't true. And so there's a lot of pain and resentment that exists because of the bombing that my country did in Iraq. And many people feel resentful, and they feel the only way to have redress is through revenge. And what happened by the Islamic State to the journalists is deplorable. It's deplorable. And so is the violence that the United States committed against the people of Iraq. As a murder victim family member, I met other murder victim family members in Iraq. And it was, I just completely empathized with the pain and suffering that they experienced. And so where do we begin to break the cycle of violence? We have to say we're sorry if we committed a wrong. That's where we begin. We have to repent. And then we can begin the process of healing. And that's what's required. Repentance can lead to conversion and transformation, which is what we've been talking about here. Transformation can occur if we're truly willing to embrace the pain and the anguish and the sorrow, and to say that is something that can be redeemed. And so violence begets violence, begets violence. And Dr. King said it so well, and he was referring to the time that we're in. We live in a nuclear age. He said the choice before us is no longer between violence and nonviolence. It's either nonviolence or non-existence. We either learn to resolve our problems through diplomacy and through nonviolent means, or we will destroy ourselves and perish as fools. And I think there's a great deal of wisdom in that. And then, of course, Jesus says, he or she who is without sin, let them cast the first stone. So we have to always come back to that question at the beginning. What would Jesus have us do? And then how can we really be about the process of healing and peace that's rooted in love and justice and compassion?
Yes, I totally share the feeling that we have to try to break a cycle of violence. But we live in a society where there is a lot of violence. So it is correct, the question that the first mom said. How to create a balance for the families of the victims? An answer was from my friends, but I think that there are two victims always, not only one, when we speak about the death penalty. Because we have the families that had a loss, and I really think that in any case, you cannot heal from the pain if not by friendship and love. Whenever any kind of other tools do not work. This is the reality. So, as a state, as a society, if there are programs to support the families of the victims, it would be good. But I think I can give you an answer as the community of Sant'Egidio. We would go, we would try to become friends, we would try to go beyond that, doing good things for others. And then I think that friendship, the community, is healing. And all the hatred or all the revenge feeling can be turned into trying to be good with others. I think that this is a way of healing. I do not have another answer for the families that had a loss. But there are the new victims, because any person sentenced to death and then sent to death, their own children, families, all of them will be stigmatized all their life because of their relative killed by the state. And they have no fault, in no way. So there are these victims that are as victims as the other victims, and these victims are created only by the state. This is the first part. The second thing is, if there is no deterrence in the death penalty, how to deter? Well, you know, I can tell you this, that when there is a lot of poverty, no instructions, no hope in life, it is easy that somebody takes advantage of that and shows you an easy way to sell drugs, to be in a gang, and so on. And, but if there is more instruction, more education, the community of Sant'Egidio started schooling children in shacks, taking care of families where sometimes the mother was brutalized by the father. There was prostitution, there was selling people. Schooling children step by step, creating a family with the poor, became a new model. So I'm not saying that a whole society will change and violence will disappear, but I know that with education, development, a little more well-being, and also criminality will decrease. On the other hand, I know that we must talk to the people, to the children, to the kids, to be together, not just talk, to become friends. And we can create something different. So you can do it even from now, starting from now. Then I want to say restorative justice, but when you have little means in a justice system, I think that the only way, in any case, to create less violence and less crime is to create not tougher laws, not more forbidden things, but more consensus on the right things. It is like when at home, mama says, no, 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 but when she's not there, you try to do something. But if you understand that if you put your hand on the fire, you get burned, you will not do it. Not because mama says don't do it. So I think that the only way is to create a society where you interest me, where we are more together, and if you have a problem, it's my problem. And this is, I think, step by step, creates a better society. On death row, if you have the death penalty, if there is no hope, even for the for the law enforcement staff is more dangerous. If you have a prison where there is no rehabilitation, it is more dangerous for the law enforcement people. But if there is hope, the defendants, the people in prison will collaborate more happily, because this means that they will be more free sooner. There is an example, many examples in Italy of prisons where there are programs where you really can work in prison, where really you can learn something, where really you can go out for some periods of times. In those prisons, the recidive, the recurrent crimes after you go away from prison are very low. In the other prisons, many of those who go out then come back to prison. It's a different way of doing things, but it is possible. And I conclude saying that the problem in society is always safety, to guarantee that people can have a safe life. But it is not with more prisons or with more tough laws that you can do this. I think that we must create more solidarity, less distance between the poor and the other people, and I think that this can become possible. So for the journalist that was killed, beheaded, and that are beheaded by the terrorist groups in Iraq, these are not just terrorist groups. It is the first time that they are creating a state. And they are using the beheading on television to create the reaction of big states that reinforces them, because in that way they show that they are strong, and so that they can attract Muslim people to be with them, even if Muslim people are against the war. So it's a very complicated thing. In that case, the problem is like a war. So the problem is the evil of war. But about terrorism, to fight and destroy a state like Iraq because of terrorism, because of the Twin Towers, well, that is like to shoot at flies with guns instead of using anti-insect something. You must use intelligence, not wars. So this is destroying the world. So I conclude saying that I'm very happy to be with you, and I really thank who organized this. But I suggest you to take note of the www Sant'Egidio without apostrophe, without the just one word, .org, because in this way you can be in touch with her, and you can change the world. Thank you.
Just one more thing. I just have to conclude by saying this. We may not have all the answers, and I sensed that there was, from both sides of the room, despair and frustration. And I want to validate that. I want to validate that. I've worked in law enforcement for 30 years, and I have been frustrated myself. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to end with what I started with. Mario said yesterday, when he gave his talk to the ministers of justice, that no battle is impossible. No battle is impossible. Why? Because the truth always wins in the end. It may not look like it. It may not feel like it sometimes, but in the end, the truth always wins. And what is the truth? The truth is the tenets of our faith, that we hold strong to the tenets of our faith, that even in the sight of evil and darkness and ugliness and fear, we hold strong to the tenets of our faith. Because when we don't, we become part of the problem. We give in to that despair. We give in to it, and it consumes us. So stay strong.
So thank you for the question and answers. So as we conclude what we have for today, also for yesterday, as we talk about the Cities for Life, which the invitation of community is a Cities for Everyone. This meeting is not a theoretical meeting, but a meeting for life. So the Cities for Life is a city campaign for living together, for working together, and to work together with the poor, the children, the young people, to build a city together with the poor people. So we are all called to be workers for the cities now and not for tomorrow. So we invite especially the young people to work with us, the community of Sant'Egidio, together working with the poor. As Mario has said, the culture of life, which starting of communicating the gospel, of friendship, even just one poor people, and staying with the poor. We invite you once again to visit the website of Sant'Egidio. It's www.santegidio.org. And we are really looking forward to work with every one of you, especially the young people, so that we can build a more humane world, starting of building a cities for everyone. So thank you po.
Newspaper that I passed around can be returned.
Yes, okay. To show our deepest appreciation, may we call on Alberto Quattrucci, Secretary General for Peoples and Religions of the community of Sant'Egidio, to assist us in giving the plaques of appreciation to our beloved speakers and to one person who made this event possible. I have to read it first.
So we invite everyone to join us in front and let's have a picture together. But later on, after we tell this dedication.
Just to explain what I... Come up on the stage. Come back. Start to come up. Just to read... Come back. This is to George, this was to Mario Marazziti. Clap the hand again, please, to Mario. And now to George Kane. This is a recognition in sincere recognition and profound gratitude for his invaluable contribution as a resource speaker to the successful attainment of the first Asia-Pacific dialogue on human rights and respect for the dignity of life with the theme, No Justice Without Life. And the third one, with the same recognition, is to Arthur Leffin. Please clap the hand also to him. And probably, this is not, come up. Now we can say together, no justice without, no justice without life.
May we also call on Undersecretary Francisco Baraan, please?
Please come up. Francisco, come up with us. But together with Francisco, I kindly ask all of you also to come on the stage, not down, on the stage, please. Come, stand up, walk on that direction and come up on the stage, please, for the picture.
Can you read this one also because it's different from those.
Well, now to the Honorable Francisco Barán III, in sincere recognition, profound gratitude for his dynamic leadership and wholehearted support, we redounded to successful attainment of the first Asia-Pacific Dialogue on Human Rights and Respect for Human Dignity of Life with the theme, No Without Life. you can do the same. You are for life. You are for life. You are for life. No, are you for life? Are you for life? I don't hear. Are you for life? Oh, now you have to put the finger up, up, up.
Alam ni Yusef na magsasalita. Alam mo. Oo.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And then now our speakers has to invite. Now, yeah, please, come here. Again.
Sige, sabihin
Together.
mo to take their seats. May we request everybody to please take their seats after the photo session. We're not yet through.
But I want a picture with that. Thank you. You have been very great.
Thank you.
Can we settle down first? Oh, pwede.
And now, may we call on the Undersecretary Francisco F. Baran III from the Department of Justice to give us a short message.
Thank you. So, tayo'y patapos na po sa ating first Asia-Pacific Dialogue on Human Rights and Respect for the Dignity of Life. Will you agree with me that this has been a resounding success? Di ba? So, palagpakan po natin yung pong talagang the ones who really made this possible. I'd like to mention some names. The community of Sant'Egidio, I would like to especially mention Leonardo. Where's Leonardo? Let's give a big hand to Leonardo. The Parole and Probation Administration under the leadership of Manico. Palagpakan po natin yung mga angels ni Manico na nagtrabaho kahit gabing-gabi na walang overtime pay. Yung ating pong mga kasama sa DOJ, of course, I'd like to mention si Miss Res Juan. Ito po, ang ating MC. Ano ba yun? No voice. This is the first time that dahil puyat na puyat po tayo. So this is the first time that we are holding this outside Rome. Itong First Pacific Dialogue on Human Rights and Respect for the Dignity of Life. Alam niyo po, in the entire Asia-Pacific region, there are only 17 of 59 countries that have abolished the death penalty. It means that we are the minority in this part of the world. But even if we are the minority, we keep on. We continue to struggle, even if it is a lonesome and lonely struggle, because there is meaning in the struggle itself. Ang ating slogan na inulit-ulit ni na Mario, palagpakan po natin si Mario, Alberto, Valerie, our guests from all over the world, from the US, from Japan, from Cambodia, no justice without life. Indeed, there can be no justice if we negate life. There can only be justice if we affirm and protect life itself. No justice without life. So yan po, that's our slogan. A country, a state that allows the death penalty is a country that encourages violence. Because execution is an act of violence. Di ba? So, we will not, in this part of the world, allow our leaders to again reimpose the death penalty. Pwede ba? Kayong mga bata na nandito kayo mga estudyante, we thank you for being here. We thank you for your participation. Our friends from the LGUs, governors, mayors who came over, the vice mayors, councilors, ang ating mga kaibigan, our friends from the lay and the religious, mga pastors, mga pari po na nandito ngayon. All of you, from the bottom of our heart, we in the Department of Justice that co-sponsored this first Asia-Pacific dialogue. We thank all of you. We cannot thank you enough for your presence and for your participation. And I think because of the resounding success of this event, maybe again next year, on the years that will follow, we will have another Asia-Pacific dialogue here in the Philippines. And finally, on behalf of the Secretary of Justice, Secretary Laila de Lima, I extend our gratitude to the community of Sant'Egidio. I was one of the participants in one of the international ministers' meeting that was held in Rome 2 years ago. And now we have been honored for having been chosen by the community to co-host this event this year here in Manila, here in Mandaluyong City. I'd like to extend our thanks to the Mayor of Mandaluyong and to the good people of Mandaluyong for all the sacrifices, for the support, and for their cooperation that led to the success of this first Asia-Pacific dialogue. So, ganun na po. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat. Good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you, Honorable Baraan. Just an announcement, may we just ask where the newspaper clipping of Mr. Arthur Laffin is? It's okay. Thank you. Can you please just return it to him? All right. Thank you very much. You may now get your snacks there, and then we can proceed to the Greenfields area for the final ceremony. Thank you.